is 30.11.
This film was designed as a memory jogger for pilots, not as a comprehensive treatment of terminal area communications. And this commentary provides us an opportunity to discuss additional lessons that we simply couldn't find time for in our 15-minute film. It also affords us an opportunity to explain why some scenes in dialogue were presented the way they were.
Hi, this is Roger Motzko.
Rocky Capozzi.
Charlie Hewitt.
And we're part of the Runway safety team. Charlie, Mojave, how was it?
Talk about a glorious day in Mojave. A couple days, actually, but the day that we shot this with Dick was, it's just one of those days you dream of, man. It was about 6 o'clock in the morning, and this is a guy who loves to fly. He was flying before we even showed up, before the crew even showed up, he was already in the air.
So Dick was the right guy to have host this film. A lot of passion around communication. Dick's a CFI. At first contact, this was something that he really wanted to do. So we appreciate his donation of time in putting this together.
Pretty cool here, this aircraft that Dick is flying, the Long EZ, as well as this one right here, Voyager, that he flew around the world. And later in the film, we see him with, in Robert Shearer's Starship. All three of those aircraft are Burt Rutan designs.
And the Starship, remarkably N-numbered, RS on the end for runway safety.
Yeah, we planned it that way.
I saw that. So again, here's kind of our tagline: if you can dream it, you can do it. Dick's motto, and kind of led us to the listen up, read back, fly right title. And Dick believes that, you know, if you can think it, you can communicate it. So we really want to thank Dick for hosting this film for us. Second in the series of the Fly Right series, Runway Safety Fly Right
series.
Whether
your dream is to fly a rocket into space or a Cessna into the wilderness, you can do it safely with planning, preparation, and communication.
You're seeing a shot here with Dick with headset and mic on. As a new pilot, I was surprised to find out that there are people out there with some regularity flying without headsets, and some even without radios. Given the amount of traffic that's out there, that was startling.
It's a great host that brings his own airplane to the party.
As pilots, our success, our very lives depend on our ability to communicate effectively at all times.
So Birchwood, Alaska, for those of you that don't know it, it's located outside of Anchorage, about 25 miles. It's a non-towered airport. And we chose to start our movie here just to show that communications are just as important in the non-towered environment as they are in a towered environment. And so making that communications plan, just like Deb writing it all down, local frequencies that she's going to be using, those that she might anticipate, rather than trying to look them up in the facilities directory while she's flying, having them on that knee pad sure makes a lot of difference. I really kind of like this sequence where it shows Deb pre-flighting the aircraft and talking about creating a communications plan so that we want to fix those two pieces together, that a communications plan is really part of that pre-flight planning before engine startup.
And writing down not just the frequencies that you will use, but writing down the frequencies that could potentially pop up. So if you have to be diverted to another airfield, that's written down on your kneeboard as well.
All part of the pre-flight.
And this scene really makes the case for a pre-flight study of your airfield layout and then carefully tracking your position. It's real easy to see here how snow and ice can obscure paint markings and signs.
Birchwood traffic 408 inbound for landing.
408, this is Cessna 63541, taxiing from West Ramp.
Also, it's important for pilots to remember they need to check NOTAMs for non-towered airports as well as towered airports. The NOTAMs may be the only source of information about changed communication frequencies, pattern procedures, closed runways, taxiways, other hazards, and so it's just as important, if not more, at non-towered airport. Check those NOTAMs.
And that's particularly true because quite often those fields will not have ATIS, may not have an ASOS either.
The one thing we really wanted to accomplish while making this film was for it to be real. Real scenarios, real situations. And it was unanimous that we follow a flight from a non-towered environment into and back out of a towered environment.
Yeah, you know, the United States has over 12,000 non-towered airports, but only about 450 towered airports. And while general aviation accounts for the lion's share of operations in non-towered airports, it is about 55% of the activity at towered airports as well.
Yeah, that's true, and that's why a lot of pilots can relate to Deb. They seldom fly in controlled airspace or at towered airports, so it's understandable they might be reluctant to venture into that. In the narration states, a clearance is required before entering Class C airspace. To be precise, two-way communication with ATC is all that's required, whereas before entering Class B airspace, you do have to have an ATC clearance.
Of course, we couldn't not take the opportunity to show a little bit of Alaska in this film.
You know, it's a good idea to let a controller know as soon as possible when you intend to ask for something out of the ordinary. And that's why Deb uses a simple introductory phrase, request, when she contacts approach. It's a heads up.
And let the controller know that you have a request sooner rather than later. This increases the odds the controller will be able to accommodate you and decreases the odds he'll have to ask you to repeat your transmission.
Now, this is a good scene for instructors to talk to their students about developing a consistent habit pattern for the use of their radio stack. You know, what's the optimum way to store or display the last frequency used and the next frequency you're anticipating? And you can see Deb, you know, marks these things down on a piece of paper for her knee board.
Approach south of Big Lake at 3,500, say request.
Approach Cessna 63541.
And of course, Deb wisely chooses to let the approach controller know right up front that she isn't familiar with that local airspace. So letting a controller know, you know, that you're unfamiliar doesn't relieve you of the responsibility to read the airfield facility diagram, check NOTAMs, carry current publications. But it does alert the controller that, you know, you're probably not going to recognize local landmarks, and you're going to require a little more than average amount of handling, you know, during this particular route of flight. So always be willing to tell a controller if you're unfamiliar with the local area that you are.
Cessna 63541, negative. That's 160 on the heading.
No, we made a mistake in the read back, so we can show you just how important it is. Read back all of those heading and altitude instructions,
Cessna 63541,
because
turning left
there's a better
160
opportunity that air traffic's going to catch it then. And we talk about maintaining situational awareness. It's really monitoring the radio channel at this point, scanning the horizon, being sure that as they're calling out targets, you're identifying the correct ones. So maintaining a little observation over your radio frequencies gives you an awful lot of situational awareness so that you're prepared to execute any instructions you might get.
Cessna 63541, Merrill Airport, 10 o'clock, 4 miles just east of the large buildings downtown. Report airport in sight.
Cessna 63541 has airport in sight.
You know, monitoring and interpreting the frequency chatter helps you build a mental picture of what's happening around you and identify potential conflicts before they become evident.
Effective communications requires you to listen and think before you speak. Always use proper phraseology. An accurate readback is vital, I know.
And if you don't talk on the radios and fly frequently, making concise transmissions or using proper phraseology is not easy. It's something that needs to be practiced. And an occasional review of the pilot controller glossary and the AIM is a real good idea here.
Following proper communication protocol was vital to mission success and to my survival. Sloppy communication didn't cut it out there, and it doesn't cut it out here either.
Cessna 541, wind 220.
You know, we picked this scene up after Deb made the initial contact with the tower. And that's why the tower controller uses the abbreviated call sign Cessna 541. Of course, the recommended practice is always use your full call sign on that initial contact so that it eliminates any confusion.
3018. Hold short, runway 24, landing traffic.
Cessna 93018 holding short, runway 24.
Well, this scene here is interesting because we see this mistake made fairly frequently across the country. When you're told to hold short for landing traffic, it's very dangerous to assume there's only one plane on final. It's human nature, but there may be several airplanes on final. So once you're told to hold short, you want to continue to hold your position until the controller clears you on the runway. And even then, be sure to look left and right before you actually proceed onto the runway.
Yep, looking left and right. Very important.
There's a scene that's about to come up, and I want you to imagine that you haven't studied this airport layout prior to arriving at the airport, Palm Springs in this case. It's easy to see how someone could mistake that oh-so-large piece of concrete in the middle of the picture with the right runway. Well, it isn't. It's actually a taxiway.
And you know, a good way to avoid landing on a taxiway is to always identify the white markings, typically white touchdown zone markings or the threshold markings, even the numbers at the end of the runway. Those large white markings, they're never going to be present on a taxiway. Taxiways are always painted yellow.
Position and hold. Cessna 8 November Yankee, position and hold, runway 31 right at Delta.
And in terms of airport safety, the single most useful habit you can cultivate is to look left and right, up and down prior to entering any runway. This applies whether you're self-announcing at a non-towered airport or whether a controller clears you on to the runway at a towered airport. Always look left and right.
Cessna 8 November Yankee, position and hold 31 right at Delta. Tower, Cessna 8 November Yankee, position and hold, runway 31 right at Delta.
Pilots and controllers have a shared responsibility for safety, so remember, don't hesitate to ask a question if you're concerned about your safety or believe an unsafe situation is developing. Ask.
And you know, that's a really good point. This particular scene depicts a forgotten pilot, but of course the flip side of the coin might be that the pilot just takes an excessive amount of time to get ready for takeoff or exit a runway, and he doesn't tell the controller. And that also sets the stage for runway incursions, so keep track of all of those instructions that you have for exiting a runway after you land, as well as entering.
It's no secret I love to fly. When I decided to fly to Alaska, I started with a thorough flight plan. That included communications.
Starship 4 Romeo Sierra, wind 220 at 6, runway 24, clear to land. Merrill Tower, Starship 4 Romeo Sierra, clear to land, runway 24.
Another nice point is made here. No matter how sophisticated the aircraft you may be flying or how simple, the fundamentals are all the same.
The airport's busy today. Lots of distractions.
Now that's a snowblower.
No, there was real maintenance.
It was very busy that day.
Yeah, good opportunity here to show that, use of that surface diagram again. You've got construction or maintenance. You can't always get to just exactly where you want to go to.
And remember, if it's your intent to use an intersection, make sure that you state that in your initial contact.
63541 at Aerotech with India. Request intersection departure, runway 24 at Juliet.
And then listen for that confirmation in the controller's instruction.
You know, anytime you become disoriented or unsure of your position, stop. Make sure you're not on a runway when you stop, but stop and reestablish your position before you continue your taxi. At a towered field, if the weather's good enough for the tower controller to see you, don't hesitate to ask for progressive taxi instructions.
Cessna 63541, tower on 126.0.
You know, although we're talking about confusion generated by similar call signs in this scene, the point is equally valid with any ATC communication. For example, if a communication is clipped, quite often transmissions are stepped on or maybe otherwise unclear to you, and it presents a risk. So you always want to clarify and verify. So if you think that maybe your transmission hasn't made it through, check again.
Hey, we've all been there. You're out flying and there's somebody else on Freak with a call sign that sounds just like yours.
Yeah, it gets confusing fast.
Now imagine you're in a tower that has 6 or 7 Cessna 172s or Cherokees on the airport. Then top it all off with multiple requests for takeoff clearances coming from different runways.
Yeah, the only way to stay on top of that situation is to focus. Listen carefully, make sure we correctly identify ourselves, and give accurate position reports.
And the last thing, don't confuse the situation by answering radio calls intended for someone else.
And remember, you must specifically acknowledge clearances to hold short, enter a runway, or to take off, and you must acknowledge the associated runway number and intersection if applicable.
Always plan for communication success. Thorough flight prep includes a solid communications plan.
We'd like to take this opportunity to thank those of you that took the time to view this commentary track
Clear position and landing runway.
in the interest of picking up a few more tips.
Know and use proper communication phraseology. It's the only way to guarantee mutual understanding and situational awareness.
And we encourage everyone who has a computer with a DVD drive to explore the PC extras. Thanks again for watching.
Always state who you're calling, who you are, where you're at, and what you want.
Visual approach to use, landing runway 6 right, runway 6 left. Departing runway 32, runway 6 left.
And finally, never enter a runway without first looking left and right.
Dick, thank you for taking your time to help us all learn about communications.
You bet, glad to.
As you know, communications is vital, whether you're a student pilot or a decorated veteran.
Hey, let's go fly.
Let's go.
Okay.